not gonna lie, I came with violence today. But before I go to violence, what's up, Mo? How you doing,
Man,
Mo?
what's happening, fam? How you, man?
You look like you're only good for 2 routes.
Man, listen, man. I can get down the field.
Hey, shout out to Malik Neighbors though. Hey, I ain't gonna hold you. That was a tough catch. Tough.
Tough catch. Tough
That
catch.
was a
I
tough
didn't
catch.
expect the ball to go there when I seen the route concepts. When I saw the route concept early, I didn't think I didn't think he should take it that deep, but I guess clearly he saw something that I didn't see from the because I wasn't watching the all 22. But it ended up working out, man.
Right. Let's jump right into something we
Yeah,
got
sure.
into about in our message, and I feel like this is a great conversation so we can show the world how to really talk about football. Let's get to the nominees who ain't that guy. You ready? Here are my nominees: Bryce Young, Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence. To that, you say what?
So that I say you have like one or two valid guys on there. I think Caleb Young is a little bit too. That's a Caleb Young. Caleb Williams is way too premature to be anybody that to be somebody that has coached, to be somebody that's played, to be somebody that has been on the strength conditioning slash skills development side. You know that anything that you get into, there's a certain level of there's a certain time frame you have to adapt in, and it depends on a lot of other factors right now, like who's calling the plays, like are they bought into this media train that you are the best thing since sliced bread to come out at the quarterback position, or do they want to slowly, you know, have you mature? We've seen the route that the Commanders are following, just to pick behind with Jaden Daniels. Now they may be doing that because they feel like their team is not up par. You know what I mean? As the one that Caleb Williams has on the field, but in terms of weapons. But I think that there's a lot of other factors that go on to that into that outside of just how you play. I don't think he showed those flashes of brilliance in the preseason for no reason. I just think that they got to lock in. I think that there was some expectations for some players on the field, and then when you lose a player or two, and then things go haywire. But Bryce Young, I think, is too early to say. Also, if you want to just say he's not the guy because he just hasn't done anything, then so be it. But I think that Carolina ship has been sinking for a long time. You look at what they put around him last year, and that's enough to get anybody gun shy. You know what I mean? Punch drunk, whatever you want to call it. Um, and then you come into this year. My only beef with Bryce Young's situation this year is bring him in a new coach. So that's two head coaches in 2 years. Really, it's three head coaches because he had an interim last year, right? So he has three head coaches, two offensive coordinators, two different play calling styles. He still doesn't have that much talent around him. And the man played one series in the preseason, and you bench him after 2 games. I think that's a little bit. I think that's a little bit out of whack. But I'll let you go.
Organization wise, I get you. As far as how they painted him out to be, uh, yeah, no. Just because, like, especially majority of these quarterbacks is coming from Alabama, and we can use Ohio State, right? They're so used to throwing like first round talent, and at the same time, if you understand the college dynamic of college football and everything, like there's a gap between this wide receiver versus this DB, unless we're looking at like a marquee game. We're looking at LSU, Alabama. We already know what we're getting. Alabama, Auburn. You know what we're getting. Who am I tripping? Alabama, Georgia, Florida. You mean, but then okay, and then South Carolina here and there, right? But outside of that, you mean there's a gap between Mo and the Amazon worker. My money on Mo. There's a gap between Mo and a UPS guy.
I mean,
My money's on Mo.
let's just take it back to last year. Like Malik Neighbors is the premier receiver in the SEC last year. And when you're not playing Georgia with Kwame Lassiter, when you're not playing Alabama with Terry and Arnold. Like
Mhm.
you're beating up on Kentucky's, you're beating up on the Vanderbilts, you're beating because like you said, there's a separation and there's a gap in terms of talent, right? You
Yep.
played like 3 real games all year until you get to the
Yep.
national championship.
And at the time, now think about it, right? Bryce had J-Mo, who's showing some flashes at Detroit. He had Mitchie. I can't think of his first
John
name.
Mechie.
Non Mechie. Uh, personally, if he didn't get an ACL tear, we're probably talking a late first round wide receiver, probably early second, right?
Mm-hmm. John
And
Mechie would have went
then
first round.
I can't remember when that wide receiver. But anyways, I'm not gonna try to get all too long drive. Let's get right to the point. My whole point is right for the people, for the guys that know, and I know you know this, right? When you make a pick within the first and the fifth, right? That pick, right, is high expectations for that team. Sometimes a little bit too high, and a lot of times which is too unfair. And that's where I come in and say, where I say, yes, I play around with this whole nominee thing, but I think it was an unfair thing for the amount of expectation that we put on Bryce because Bryce isn't the same type like
His
who was the first
predecessor, he's not Cam Newton.
Cam Newton, Andrew
Expectation.
Luck,
Yeah, he's not.
Andrew Luck. He's not a guy that where you're going to win 10. You're going to be above 500 at just with his success. You know what I mean? There's a lot of other things that comes with being an above 500 team, right? So you follow what I'm saying? Because I don't want to get too long
He's
winded and
not gonna
stuff.
put a
So
team on his back. He's not one
right.
of them guys.
So I agree with you. The organization didn't do him any favors, but also the social media didn't do him any favors because you put this more unwanted pressure onto him. So those are all the guys who are over here watching this pod and everything. I have no hate towards players. I have a problem how media doesn't do a full eval. This is why I wanted me and him are partners because I know for the fact if I read my phone, he's gonna give me a full eval, and I'm gonna give him a full eval right back in the sense of this player that player we're talking about. Now, as far as Caleb Williams and stuff, this isn't you. This is more for like shows like Speak for Yourself. Some of the guys on ESPN First Take, like Dan Orlowski, they painted this dude Caleb as if he is the guy. Now, granted, he still is the guy. Granted, it's only 3 games, but I don't want to hear any excuses about the Bears. I don't want to hear it. You got them a new OC. You got him a first round receiver, 2 receivers, a whole new running back. You come into the year with a Pro Bowl top 5 corner. I'm not trying to hear all these justifications. You know why? Because you almost not almost sorry, wrong choice of words. You had a guy who honestly I don't care to fight for it right now. Who is probably 10 yards behind you as a quarterback? Like this is picture painted as Justin Fields as he's a terrible quarterback, which isn't true. Yes, is he not the traditional quarterback because he uses his legs more than his arms? Absolutely, I get it, right? But if you pop out the stats, I see a quarterback. I see a quarterback who can do both things. You just have to give him time, just as how we're saying you got to give guys like Bryce Young time, right? Now, I don't have no 8 ball in my hand or anything to kind of tell the future about Caleb West if he would have stayed. But think about if he would have stayed and what pick you would have used for the Bears then versus you used it on Caleb Williams. Now, granted, it's 3 games. A lot can change. Maybe at the end of the game because he threw about what over 50 times. He probably learned a little bit more about the NFL. So
I think. I mean, like to your point, I think that there's a lot of expectations on these guys, but like the Justin Fields situation, I think it comes down to the majority of talent evaluators are always going to side with a quarterback whose arm is the talent more so than the other, right? Like I think that's why Lamar doesn't get as much respect as he deserves because his legs are clearly the better talent than his throwing proficiency. Let's just say that, right? Like Justin Fields, the legs were a natural ability that he had that he capitalized on, but like the processing of the field. You know, it goes back to that old dynamic of saying that our African American quarterbacks weren't smart enough to process the field and deliver and yada yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago had a lot of missteps with Justin Fields. All right, when people tell me that Justin Fields isn't this and that, like if you told me that Justin Fields wasn't one of those guys, after year three, I'm like, okay, I think that's reasonable. I've given you enough time to figure something out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right, the first year you can say is the line, okay, you had no weapons, this, that, and the third, right? But something has to something has to improve in your passing arsenal as a quarterback for most people to give you that respect, right? Like that's why I'm so upset about the Bryce Young benching. Like, give this guy, even if he's taking his lumps,
That's
give
fair.
him a chance to take his lumps. And
That's
then
fair.
after the second, even after this year, if you would have said that we're done with him, I'm like, okay, cool. You
That's
brought in a
fair.
quarterback coach to help him, yada yada yada. That didn't change anything. But like, I need to see more. I cannot see you on a terrible team. That terrible team doesn't get much better, and then you turn around and you bench me 2 games into a season, right? Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that is fair. Justin Fields had like the most unique situation where a team had a quarterback that was within his first 4 years of his contract, but they also had an opportunity to get one of the best quarterback talents that they had seen in a long time, especially whose arm talent looked like it was far more superior than the predecessor, and they got a chance to get him without it even being their pick.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm
Let's
saying?
talk though. Can I stop
So
you real quick though? Here's here's one thing though about what I recognize when people evaluate quarterbacks. Let's use last year for example, right? Notice how quick they put Brock Purdy and Tom Brady in the same sentence paragraph, right? Which I think is unfair. Personally, I'm gonna say it again. I think that's unfair because of where if you really follow Tom, you know that Brock Purdy and Tom are very far away. Now, granted, do they have a similar storyline? Yes, both for 7th round picks. I get that, right? But then actually, you got to think about this, right? Think about the amount of pressure we're putting on this dude because we're attaching him to a Hall of Famer, quote unquote, GOAT, a 7-time Super Bowl quarterback. You know what I mean? And I feel like with black quarterbacks, I feel like yes, I do think they go a little bit harder because they're not the traditional quarterback. Like I had a conversation about where um, Lamar doesn't really throw to the X and the Z. I said, well, if you on the outside of the numbers, and I said,
his
and you
talent is
know,
on the inside.
I said, but you know, I'm built for this conversation, right? Because you know, I'm all about the numbers, right? I said, well, Mahomes is not required to do that either. If you really look at his game, so
I mean, Mahomes has shown he could do it though because he had Tyreek Hill. I
I
think that I think that the difference with Lamar is his talent's on the inside. His best
right,
talent has always been on the inside.
right, but
Mark
but here's my
Andrews, Zay Flowers.
here's my point though. Here's my point, right? Because both has shown that they can do it. I never, you know what I mean? It's just the fact that we're looking for Lamar to be the traditional person, like a Josh Allen, for example, right? Josh Allen can do it. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like I tell people all the time, schemes matter, coachings matter. If a coach is drilling you to do this, guess what? That's what he's going to do. And if he don't do it, someone's job's on the line. There's
I
a you
do,
know, go on,
I
my
do,
bad.
I do side with you on coaching, but I feel like the coaching is based off your talent.
No disagreement.
I think
No disagreement.
sometimes people, coaches may limit you because they feel like you can't do X, Y, Z.
Yes.
And I think early on, Lamar wasn't as polished as the Lamar that we see now. But that it was successful, and because it was successful, they just kept it going. They rather play a hard nosed style of defense and running the ball, and Lamar's legs are added element, and then he play action off of it, RPO off of it, and get the ball down the middle of the field to Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore Ravens will tell you if they had an argument, they would say it's not for lack of effort. They drafted 3 receivers in the first round for Lamar Jackson in 6 years. They've
Mm-hmm.
drafted a whole nother plethora of like 4 other 5 receivers from the second to the fifth round.
Mm-hmm.
Now nobody has panned out because Marquise Hollywood is gone. Right, Hollywood Brown is gone. Bateman is not a Bateman's not good. We're not even going to shake. We're not going to do that. He's just not good. Right. And I love the Rashad Bateman coming out of school. I don't know why him and Lamar do not connect, But if I'm an organization, right, and you were Lamar Jackson before I drafted these people for you, I'm expecting you to elevate their game, correct? Because you have been Lamar Jackson before they got there. I'm expecting you to elevate. You won an MVP before they got here. I keep drafting receivers for you in the first round. I'm expecting you to elevate their game or y'all to elevate each other's game. At the very least, that's what the expectation is as an organization.
And
I'm not. I'm,
you know what's so funny? A lot of times I wish I could draft for teams because the one thing I pointed out with Lamar is this. If you go back and look at Louisville, the guy he was thrown to the most was a big body receiver. Big body receiver. Last year and first game, who took off? Isaiah Likely. Because I was wondering in the offseason, I said, man, they didn't pick up a quarterback. I said, you know why? I said, probably because they're going to get Isaiah Likely more activated as a receiver and keep Mark Andrews as a tight end. And so I just want to throw that out there because
and, and I'm with you on
I
that
know what you're saying.
Isaiah Likely trend because I had a young boy of mine that played at Coastal Carolina with him. They actually shared the same number when they were there. They both wore number 4. He was a
Mhm.
DB. Isaiah Likely was a fringe wide receiver, tight end, however they needed to use him. And I think that he has that skill set too. Now, can he win on the outside majority of the time? I don't think so. But like you can sprinkle that in. You need a creative offensive coordinator to use him. They have enough talent, and that's why like it's tough. Like Lamar has done everything personally, right? Like Lamar has done 2 MVPs. He's led the team in rushing and throwing for 5 out of the last 6 years. Like that's insane, right? Like
Mhm.
so, it's they gave him the big contract. They've drafted receivers for him. It's, like I said, it's not for lack of effort. So at a certain point, you as the guy, Mr. Two-time MVP, unfair, yes, but you have to get us there. You have to take
Right,
us over the top.
right.
Especially when we've always equipped you with a great defense. We've always equipped you with a good or solid offensive line, a very very solid offensive line and run game, right? Like we're expecting you
Right,
to make the improvements in your passing arsenal to get us to where we need to be. Like I can
right.
promise you, they thought that Lamar Jackson will make Rashad Bateman better, and it hasn't happened. Like
He's
Zay
honestly
Flowers.
hasn't been he's honestly hasn't been the same since he broke his foot. But anyways,
So it's
it's,
things like that, right? It's things like that.
mm,
Hollywood Brown, whatever reason they had the Florida connection, 3 years into it, they trade him to the Cardinals. Like who knows? Like he wants to be out of there after a certain time, So I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? They've changed the offensive coordinator. So most people, like I always say, and I'm gonna go back to your point about the media. Most people listen to the media, which is what upsets you, right? And I
mm,
always talk about lazy narratives. I always talk about it. I studied communications in college with a concentration in journalism. Stephen A.
mhm.
Smith talks about it all the time. Lazy narratives, lazy reporting. Like people like latch on to a thing and they take off with it, and they
Man,
take
listen,
off with it all the
man,
time,
listen.
and you can never escape it. You can never.